So there's a really interesting video that's trending on social media. This is basically former Raider wide receiver Davante Adams, who's in this video. And in the video, he takes a massive shot at the Las Vegas Raiders. And I want to talk about Davante Adams taking shots at the Raiders, because this is not the first time he's taken a shot at the Raiders. And I want to kind of talk about this. And I'm going to let you guys watch this video, and then we'll talk about this on the other side.
Everybody else would want to ask you this question as well. Little did we know that you'd be playing with Jimmy G again, right?
Yeah.
Based on that series. How's that?
It's amazing. I love Jimmy, and it was never a personal thing, and I was hoping we didn't have to have these kind of – I'm surprised this is the first time it's been brought up, but it's been amazing. We got to, catch up and get on the right page, and obviously that was just a dark moment in all of our lives. I think all of us were pretty miserable over there, and we kind of caught up and laughed about it, and we've been making plays since we've been out here, so it's been fun.
So there you guys have it, right? There you guys have Davante Adams basically talking about the Raiders and saying, I think all of us were pretty miserable over there. Obviously, he was talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. The question was obviously about the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo and Davante Adams are once again teammates. And with Matthew Stafford currently out, Jimmy G is currently the starting quarterback for the Rams. He's the guy throwing Davante Adams the ball. And obviously, Davante Adams, this is the first time I was asked this question about Jimmy G. People know about like the viral story that happened where Davante Adams was on, I believe it was a Netflix show where they followed some of the wide receivers in the NFL. And Davante Adams basically says, I need to get the hell out of here. This guy's going to essentially get me killed. Right? It was something like that Davante Adams basically said. And he was talking about Jimmy G and the fact that he's now once again with him as his quarterback. It was brought up. And again, he said that, I love Jimmy G. It was never really a personal thing. And then, of course, he takes a shot at the Raiders saying, I think all of us were pretty miserable over there with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's kind of crazy to me to hear Davante Adams continuously taking shots at the Raiders because it comes off super, super, super fake. Right? Davante Adams comes off to me, and do keep in mind, I never really followed Davante Adams like throughout the course of his NFL career. When he was with the Packers, I really didn't follow him on day to day. But when he was with the Raiders, I definitely did. Right? Obviously, I covered the Raiders, and I understood from Davante Adams' perspective why he did not want to be with the Raiders, given the fact that the Raiders really struggled after the first year, right, with Derek Carr. Things looked good. Year two, Davante struggled with Jimmy G. And then going into that third year, he obviously wanted out. I understood that, and I did not hold that against Davante Adams. But we're now at the point where I have literally zero respect for Davante Adams going forward. The amount of shots that this guy has taken at the Raiders, and this is not the first time, right? He's taken shots over the past 2 to 3 months at the Raiders. He once said, I'm talking about being with the Rams. Hey, this is how a real offense is essentially run, right? He was taking shots at our past offensive coordinators. To me, what Davante Adams is putting out there is absolutely ridiculous because, and I know some Raider fans already had lost respect for Davante, but there was still a large part of us that looked at it like, hey, we understand the situation. He wanted to be at the Raiders at some point. He tried making it work. It didn't work. We tried, right, as a team. Obviously, it just never ended up working. It's not a big deal. And a lot of us did not have anything negative towards Davante Adams. But again, the fact that this guy's taking shots, he's continuously taking shots. I personally have no respect for Davante Adams, and I'm pretty sure most Raider fans will agree with me at this point, especially after this most recent video. And this is obviously going viral. A lot of Raider fans are talking about it. Rightfully so, right? Because this is not the type of stuff that you want to hear as a fan from a former player. That too, a player who we gave a lot of money to. We invested a lot of assets, right? We traded a first and second round pick for Davante Adams. We could have easily drafted, I think the Packers used our pick, I believe, for Devontae Wyatt. Don't quote me on that, but that would have been a player that would have been super, super beneficial for the Raiders to have drafted instead. And you got Davante Adams, obviously, coming over to the Raiders, and now he's taking those shots. I've lost all respect. Just wanted to quickly talk about this a little bit. Let's move forward, man. I want to talk a little bit about some current Raiders stuff that's going on. So the Raiders are obviously not practicing today, but over the first 2 days of practice, we have learned a lot of really, really interesting things. One being that there are actually battles right now that are essentially happening. Now, I've already told you guys this, right? I have a friend who I trust at Raiders camp. He doesn't work for me. He works for himself. He has his own company that he kind of does things for. but I speak to him pretty much every single day. Right, I'll text him back and forth. But earlier today, I actually spoke to him on the phone, and I asked him a couple of questions about some battles that I think we've kind of been hearing about, and I wanted to get his thoughts on it. And if they are true battles, right, like, is it what it kind of seems from the outside, essentially, right? So there's 3 battles that he thinks are currently going on. Of course, I think the first one's pretty simple. Jack Sparrow-Johnson, Jordan Meredith, I think is the very, very first battle that's kind of going on. And I think most people already know, right? Like, it's going to be an open battle. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson does win the job, but I also wouldn't be surprised. Based off of Pete Carroll's comments yesterday, right, he talked about how Jordan Meredith fits as a center a little bit more, right? And he didn't say necessarily over Jackson Powers-Johnson, but he kind of implied it. He basically said that when you look at a guy like Jordan Meredith, he's like 6'2", 305 pounds. He's on the smaller side as a center, which also means he's faster and he's quicker. And usually centers like that are a little bit better, especially for wide zone schemes. Now, the one thing I will say is Jackson Powers-Johnson, although he's an absolute massive human being, he is very, very, very quick for his size. So I think, he should be the starting center for the Raiders. I think that puts our best offensive line out there. But that is the first of the 3 battles. And again, I think everybody kind of knows that. There's 2 other battles that are currently going on that I want to just kind of get a little bit more into. According to this guy, he said that the other battle is a battle at the cornerback position. So he talked about Eric Stokes, and he basically confirmed that he thinks Eric Stokes is going to be the starting cornerback for the Raiders. Eric Stokes has taken every single first-team snap. He's basically never coming off the field. So that's a really, really good sign in itself, right? Which is that Eric Stokes has fit the scheme well enough that the Raiders have that trust in him. And he's a veteran as well, right? He's coming into, I think, year 5 at this point. So there's some of that, like, experience factor with Eric Stokes. And according to this guy, Eric Stokes is going to be one of the starting corners for the Raiders. But the opposite cornerback position is kind of up in the air. And at first, I obviously thought Ja'Cory Bennett would end up winning that job, or at least it'd be like Ja'Cory Bennett's job to lose. But we found out really, really early on in the process, OTA's minicamp, that the Raiders did not feel the same way about Ja'Cory. And more than that, right? They also were rotating in multiple different guys. At some point, they brought in Shaquille Griffin on a visit. Once they brought in Griffin, and Griffin ended up going back to the Seahawks, they bring in JT Woods, another corner. And they end up signing Woods to the Las Vegas Raiders roster. And, early on in the process, I thought it would be Ja'Cory. And the guy that I speak to kind of said the same thing, right? He said that early on, he thought it would have been Ja'Cory as well. But in OTAs and minicamp, they learned real quick that it's not going to be Ja'Cory. And it was Darian Porter getting all of those snaps. And even then, it wasn't DeCameron Richardson. But right now, he's saying that the 2 guys taking most of the first-team snaps is DeCameron Richardson as well as Darian Porter, the rookie. So it seems like the Raiders might end up starting a guy who might be essentially a rookie or a second-year player, right? DeCameron Richardson did not show much last season. And Darian Porter, for being a rookie, we'll see what he actually shows on tape this season. But it seems like that's where the battle's kind of at this point. And he thinks the wild card would be JT Woods. He thinks JT Woods might have an opportunity as well. He said that one of the things he's noticed over the past 2 days is that JT Woods has almost leaped Ja'Cory Bennett. JT Woods initially was not getting like second team snaps, but he's now coming in with the second group essentially. Right, JT Woods is getting more snaps, or at least he's getting snaps ahead of even Ja'Cory Bennett, which some people think Ja'Cory Bennett now might be with third team unit, right? Or even potentially if there is a 14 unit. Ja'Cory Bennett is now taking snaps with that unit. Again, that's wild to me to think, because that means Ja'Cory Bennett could actually be released by the Raiders. I don't think it's going to happen, but, just keep this in mind. You have Eric Stokes as your starting corner, DeCameron Richardson or Darian Porter. One of those guys will be the other corner. But that puts you at 3 corners right there, right? JT Woods is another guy that has, at this point, leaped Ja'Cory Bennett. And that doesn't include Darnay Holmes and Lonnie Johnson, who have been rotating in at the slot corner position. So you can say that puts you at 6 corners. And even if you want to consider one of those guys a safety, that's still 5 cornerbacks. I don't know how many more corners the Raiders will keep at that point. You have Ja'Cory, you have Sam Webb as well. And you even have Vance Greedy, right? I'm sorry, you have Greedy Vance as well at that point, right? To me, Greedy Vance is one of those guys that gets his hands on the football, right? He's obviously one of those guys that has flashed, and he has 2 interceptions over the past couple of days at practice. He's another wild card, right? This guy tells me that he thinks there's a chance that Greedy Vance could make the roster. We'll see if he can actually do it, but if he is able to do it, like, is there a roster spot at this point for Jacorian Bennett? To me, it's kind of wild where we're at with the Jacorian situation. But I'll be the first to tell you guys, if it's Jacorian Bennett that gets released, if it's Sam Webb or one of these other guys, right? Greedy Vance, maybe he doesn't make the roster. I have 100% faith that Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham are going to get this secondary right. Patrick Graham historically has worked with Bill Belichick. I think Bill Belichick, there's not a better defensive-minded coach when it comes to scheming up the secondary and, tricking people and just the verbiage of a secondary unit. There's not a better coach than Bill Belichick. And Patrick Graham has learned from Bill Belichick, and we've even seen that with the Raiders. Over the past 2 to 3 years, the Raiders have had top 10 secondaries multiple times. In fact, and I know some people will disagree with this, I think the Raiders' cornerback unit has just always been really, 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 really good. 2 years ago, I think we were a top 5 unit. And again, I know corners is a hard thing to kind of measure, right, if you have a good secondary or not. Pass rush can impact secondary just as much, right? But I think the unit's been really solid. And I think this season, Patrick Graham, Pete Carroll will have it 100% right. But the battle right now for the starting quarterback, it seems like, is between Cameron Richardson as well as Darian Porter. And I think the wild card there will be JT Woods. If he does a good enough job, I think he'll kind of get that opportunity as well. And then finally, I think the last battle that's kind of going on right now, and I think this is 100% open, right? Based off the guy that tells me. To me, when I look at the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiving group, we know Jakobi Meyers is our number 1 wide receiver, and we've heard a lot, right, over the last couple of days that, hey, like, Dante Thornton's the guy, and then Trey Tucker and Jack Bech will kind of figure it out. To me, I don't think that's happening anymore at this point where we're 100% certain Dante Thornton's going to be the guy. All right, when the Raiders come out in 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, those 2 wide receivers, I think, the second of those 2 wide receivers, I think is a battle still for that position. I don't think Dante Thornton's 100% locked in at this point. Especially given this guy telling me that Jack Bech has looked really good the last 2 days. And do keep in mind that is him working with the second team unit. But if we know what Pete Carroll has kind of done up to this point, it is that if a guy has success with the second team unit, he'll get bumped up and he'll be able to play and kind of go up against, have that opportunity with the first team unit. We saw this happen with Tommy Eichenberg, who I believe it was on Friday took first team snaps. And then on Monday, the first day of pads, he once again took first team snaps, right, with the defense. So I think if there's one thing Pete Carroll does is if you show some flashes or show some success with the second team or third team unit, you pretty much move up the depth chart and you have that opportunity. We've seen it with Cameron Richardson. We've seen Jacorian Bennett on the opposite end of that. And now I think we're kind of seeing it with Jack Bech climbing a little bit, and potentially he'll be able to make that push. And remember, the Raiders drafted Jack Bech and Dante Thornton with the idea that they think Jack Bech is better, given that they drafted him ahead of Dante Thornton, right? So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. I think the battle is going to be wide open, especially in 12 personnel packages. I also wouldn't be surprised if it's Trey Tucker and Jakobi Meyers out there in the 12 personnel packages, and it'll be the rookies on the bench. And then maybe at that point, if we get into 11 personnel where you need 3 wide receivers, I think at that point we'll figure out who that third wide receiver is going to be. Something tells me Trey Tucker is going to win this job. And we'll see if that actually ends up happening. But again, according to this guy, Trey Tucker is going to be the favorite, according to him. I kind of agree with it as well, given that he's a veteran. But we'll see what ends up happening. I want to wrap this video up with just a couple more updates. The rookie rankings have officially dropped for Madden. I'm going to be honest, guys, man. I play Madden, but I don't get too much into it. And I think the rankings are always just kind of all over the place. It never makes sense to me. Travis Hunter, 84 overall. I could agree with that, right? Ashton, Jeanty, 83. I can agree with those two, given that these guys are rookies. But outside of that, none of this makes sense. Cam Ward was the number 1 overall pick. He's not even in the top 10, which is ridiculous. And I think his overall is like a 70 or 71. I saw it somewhere. Someone was kind of talking about it. To me, that's wild to think. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. But essentially, Ashton Jeanty getting an 83 overall, that's something you want to kind of hear. I also saw that Dante Thornton was given like a super, super high speed ranking. I think it was like a 96 speed, which is another positive. If you are into Madden, right? I don't know how realistic it is of guys running deep and then you can just kind of throw it out to them. But 96 is fairly fast. And, if you're able to utilize a guy like Thornton going deep, that could be beneficial, right? I might buy Madden and just live stream just to do it. We'll see. I might end up doing that here. But there's the rankings for the top 10 guys. I just wanted to really just talk about Ashton Jeanty. He's obviously going to be ranked high. I think he was probably the second best player coming out last season, or out of this draft, I should say. I could agree that Travis Hunter was the best prospect. Ashton Jeanty being number 2. You could swap them as well, right? I think both guys are really, really good football players. Abdul Carter being 3, I agree with that as well. I don't agree with Mason Graham and Will Campbell. I'm gonna be honest. With Will Campbell, I'm not sure if he's going to work out as an offensive tackle. We'll see if it actually ends up happening. He's a good football player, and I think he'll be an all-pro guard. But at tackle, I think he might struggle a little bit. But we'll see if that actually ends up happening. Mason Graham, not a fan of him at all. But we'll see if that one ends up working out for the Cleveland Browns. Jalen Walker, Kenneth Grant. I love Kenneth Grant. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player. Mikael Williams, I think he's going to be a phenomenal football player. So something tells me he's going to be the best player out of this class. I don't know why, but something tells me he might. And it's only because of the upside, right? He didn't show the best player of this class on tape, but the upside, right, with Mikael Williams is just phenomenal. Let's wrap it up, man. We got final thing that I want to kind of talk about here. This one is kind of a touchy topic, but I do want to talk about it because, according to Ari here, Adam Butler is the guy that actually was a part of that entire Christian Wilkins, situation that kind of happened. And we don't really know what fully happened, but it's slowly kind of leaking out, right? When Christian Wilkins was first released, they said it's because of the injury, he's not committed or whatever. But slowly we started to hear that, hey, there's something else going on, right? Mitchell Rentz talked about it, saying that some sort of incident happened in the locker room. More things, a couple days after that came out. Adam Schefter said that, hey, Christian Wilkins apparently kissed one of the Raiders players on the head in a playful way. And then people started talking about that, and we all knew what Adam Schefter was putting out there was a complete lie, right? He was basically putting out a story for Christian Wilkins, right? Christian Wilkins and his agent most likely reached out to Adam Schefter and said, hey, this is the story we need you to put out there. And Adam Schefter put it out there. He went on the Pat McAfee show and he said, hey, the Christian Wilkins situation, what happened was he was just playing around with one of his teammates. He kissed him on the head in a playful manner, and that teammate overreacted. That was what Adam Schefter said, but we know that's a lie as well. Mike Florio called Adam Schefter out, saying that, hey, Adam Schefter's lying. He's covering it up. Most likely that agent gave him that information. So essentially they could, in the future when Michael Parsons gets signed, it's the same agent as Christian Wilkins. Adam Schefter will be the first one to get that information, right? So scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, vice versa type thing, right? But with that, Ari basically here put it out there that the situation that happened with Christian Wilkins actually involved Adam Butler. Adam Butler was the other player on that. And we don't know, right? We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know if Christian Wilkins, playfully kissed Adam Butler on the head, but it seems like that's not the full story. And I'm sure at some point we're going to get the full story. But I just wanted to talk about that because, a couple days back, I told you guys probably the following time we'll talk about Christian Wilkins. I said that an incident happened, but really, he didn't want to get the surgery, and that was kind of the end of it. And that obviously was not the end of it, right? This is a much, much, much bigger story than what we know at this point. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've spoken to Adam Butler multiple times. The guy's a really, really, really good person, at least from when I've ever spoken to him, right? And, Adam Butler even did a presser. And in that presser, a lot of people pointed it out. He speaks really, really, really well. And whatever happened, we'll find that out at some point. But I did want to just update you guys with the situation that's kind of happening. At the end of the day, I'm happy that the Raiders have moved off of Christian Wilkins. It seems like the guy was weird. I did not know about the background situation, right? Like he grabbed the player. inappropriately during the middle of a game. It was caught on camera. He's apparently had some of these situations happen in the past. I did not know any of that, right? And the fact that the Raiders released him, it now seems like the Raiders actually may have released him for something completely unrelated. Apparently, one of the players could have been Adam Butler, could have been someone else. Someone went to the Raiders HR, and this could actually impact the Raiders. And I don't know, all the details to this, but the Raiders, when they voided the guaranteed money for Christian Wilkins, they voided it saying that his foot is not fully healthy and he's not doing everything that he needed to do. So the Raiders went forward with that, and they kind of released him based off of the thought process there. And the fact that a player may have reported Christian Wilkins to HR, and if that's the reason why the Raiders released him, from what I'm hearing, it means that the Raiders might actually have to pay him. Right? It's $35 million. We might actually have to give him that money if it's something else, right? Now, I don't know exactly how everything will work, but I'm sure we'll find out over the next couple of days. Now, keep in mind, Christian Wilkins will count $29 million against the Raiders cap next season. That is the dead cap hit we're going to have for him next season. We might be able to split that out over the next couple of seasons, but if Christian Wilkins ends up winning the the thing that he's kind of fighting, the grievance case with the NFLPA, the Raiders will then have to incur another $35 million dead cap hit, which would be absolutely brutal in my opinion. Regardless of that, man, let me know what you guys think, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What are your guys' thoughts on Davante Adams, the Christian Wilkins situation, as well as some of these positional battles? The Raiders will have camp obviously kind of coming up. They'll we'll continue to get some news, and the game's literally a week away at this point, right? So I am super excited for that first preseason game that the Raiders will be in. I think the Hall of Fame game is actually tomorrow, so I'm excited for that as well. Football is officially back, man. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.